Hello and welcome back to the Eternal Witnesses podcast, your favorite podcast for everything competitive, modern, legacy, and vintage Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Mark Mara. As always, I am joined by the indestructible 2020 himself, Michael Mapson. Say hi, Mapson.
Hello.
Oh, you thought I was going to go Birdman again this time, but we got to switch it up, man. You can't be predictable. And we actually have a special guest joining us today who we'll get to in just a moment. But to keep you in suspense, we do want to remind you, if you are listening to us for the first time or somehow you keep stumbling on us, but you haven't hit subscribe, you haven't liked us on YouTube, you haven't left us a comment, please do. Goes a long way and really helps us out. And tell your friends and family about us as well, anybody that loves Magic or card games in general. But with that said, without further ado, we have the reigning 2024 Legacy Eternal Weekend champion, Kelvin Wallace, with us. Hi, Kelvin. Thanks for coming on here.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, really exciting. And as promised on our previous episode, we've got some really great Eternal Weekend prep here for everybody listening. So I know the last couple episodes had a decent amount of modern content. This is really going to be legacy and vintage as we get into Eternal Weekend season here in the States. So, I mean, Kelvin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how long have you been playing Magic? How'd you get into Legacy? And, obviously you got a lot of great insights that we'll get into as the defending champ here, but would love to just kind of give the listeners a little bit of a picture of, who you are and who they're listening to.
Yeah, so I'm Kelvin. So I've been playing on and off since 2011. The first set I ever drafted was Avacyn Restored. It was one of the most horrendous limited environments of all time, but it was still fun. The flavor was good and the cards were neat. So I mainly started playing Legacy because mainly I just really did not like maintaining a standard deck that it rotated, and the only GP that I could go to at 15 years old and was the local GP in Seattle was a Legacy. So I was like, okay, cool. I've got a little extra money. Started high school, got some extra freedom, so it's great. Let's make a Legacy deck. And at that point, Legacy decks were only $1,200 or something along those lines.
Cheap.
Cheap. It was cheaper than standard. I was spending like $300-400 a year to just maintain, say, a Khan's fetch land and stuff like that. So after that, as the first deck I built was Ant in like early 2013, 2014, and then I just have never not played primarily Legacy since then. It was just the most fun format where I could always play my neat cards, and generally found the gameplay to be it was great. Even when I was like in the midst of Treasure Cruise and Sensei Dividing Top and Deathrite Shaman into Taxi and Pros. Other cards I look back fondly. I kind of miss some of them.
Yeah, through thick and thin, you've stuck with it then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So that's great. And do you enjoy vintage as well, or are you primarily a Legacy gamer?
The first chance I've got to play vintage, I've been in love with it. Like vintage is a lot of fun. It's like the pinnacle of very sharp, high power Magic, where there's definitely 10-15% of games where you simply will do nothing, but the majority of games are incredibly interactive. I feel like it's the highest skill expression format where all of your micro decisions really do impact the game. And it's always fun activating Black Lotus and activating Time Vault and all these other cards where you rarely ever get to experience them.
There is just something, the look on your opponent's face when you assemble Time Vault Manifold Key. There's nothing like it in any other format in Magic as far as I'm concerned.
But yeah, there's nothing quite like the opportunity where it's actually correct to just untap your Time Vault to its replacement effect.
Yeah. Well, hey, so I mean, since Smokestack fell out of favor, you don't see that too often. But yeah, anytime you can skip a turn, that's a fun story for the table at dinner that night.
Yeah, I mean, usually I always do it to keep my One Ring protection if I'm
Well,
playing
that's a good one.
shops.
Yep. Fair enough. That's a good one as well. So, kind of wanted to start off here talking a little bit, more of an open conversation with you and Mapson around, things like the state of vintage and some new cards and stuff like that. And then for the back half here, we'll zero in maybe a little bit more on some of the Eternal Weekend specific preparation and, deck selection mindset and that sort of thing. So let's jump right into it. I mean, first thing is first. What do you guys think about the state of Legacy right now and the state of vintage? I know maybe a mixed bag for some folks on the Legacy side. Vintage got some new and exciting toys recently. Like, how do you guys feel like the metagame is for these formats as we head into North American EW?
So Legacy is definitely slightly warped. It's been dominated by Underground Sea for probably the past 2 years at this point,
Yeah.
even through like 3 or 4 bannings. Um, Deck is was good. Like it's probably the default choice for a lot of players going tournament weekend. It's probably going to be one of the higher win rate decks. Like it's no way it's going to be like under 53% match win percentage. And mainly you've seen Legacy as a graveyard's just been the dominant zone in the past 6 months, especially.
Yeah. I mean, Mapson, any additional thoughts on Legacy there?
Yeah, I think Legacy, kind of like Kelvin said, I am getting kind of sick of seeing Reanimator all the time. Underground Sea has come a lot, and the graveyard has been like very present as a whole, right? Between like Reanimator, Breakfast, Oops, just like very graveyard centric. But I do think that I think there's a lot of good gameplay, but there's also a lot of terrible gameplay. Like the games that don't just end to like Oops on turn one or like into Reanimate on turn two. I think once you get past those, there's like a lot of fun to be had, but there are also a lot of just kind of nonsense non games right now.
Yeah, I think it'll also be interesting. I don't know if you guys saw, Wizards put out an article today about a change to the BNR schedule. And so essentially, they're moving the next BNR to November 10th, which is unfortunately after U.S. Eternal Weekend, but it is, I believe, before European and Asian Eternal Weekends. And so, like, they'll have, the data from EW to make any legacy decisions if they're going to make any changes then. And then they also outline that there will be a more frequent ban cadence, which I think everybody is happy about. They can't seem to figure out what the right schedule is, but it does sound like there will be a more frequent ban cadence going forward, or at least a window to do so. So that's encouraging. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, if the results at Eternal Weekend do end up being really lopsided for blue-black, like if, that leads to maybe yet another card from that deck getting whacked before, the additional Eternal Weekends happen this year.
Yeah, but
Oh,
even if it doesn't, even though Reanimator is above everything else, like I don't think it's significantly above everything else. Like I like even though it's stayed ahead, like the win percentage I don't think is like too egregious.
yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
I think yeah, Reanimator largely is not a very good deck if you get to turns 4 plus. Like I have definitely found that the games where I untap without being reanimated, turn three playing literally anything, I generally have a very high win percentage against Reanimator. The issue is Thoughtseize into Entomb Reanimate, or how easily it can basically have a turn two kill with backup. But a lot of the kind of Nihil Spellbomb effects or whatever do buy a lot of time and push you into the mid game, mid and late game, where it's not that good of a deck anymore without the reanimation package, at least pre-board. Like there's no Dothies or Barrowglyphs. So I think looking over the data, let's credit the Legacy Data Collection Project for that. The win rate in collected events is about 55% with a pretty tight confidence interval. So that's definitely a very good win rate. That's generally what Delver has been in the past. But the issue is it's not Delver, it's a combo deck, which means that 55 is generally extremely high, especially for a graveyard-based combo deck. It's the combination of Tameo, Thoughtseize, and Tomb Reanimate, both somewhat of a grind, fair threats, and functional turn two kills. Just means it's probably the easiest thing to be doing. It's the easiest thing to have a high win rate just because it has all the best interaction and a very powerful combo plan.
Yeah, I think the addition of Tameo in that deck, being able to move away from Murktide and, have a plan that's not so reliant on the graveyard in game one is just such a shot in the arm that maybe it didn't need that. Yeah, kind of keeping it at the top here, but all very good points. How about vintage? Maps, and I know you don't play a ton of vintage, but you've been dabbling. I've been dragging you to some events, and even though you may not admit to it publicly, I've seen you smile casting Paradoxical Outcome at least once. So what do you guys think about vintage right now? Do you feel like there's maybe a similar uh, beatable but still boogeyman in vintage, or is vintage feeling pretty good right now across the board?
I haven't played enough since Tezzeret came out to have like a very defined opinion. 'Cause I know people were really high on the Tezzeret PO list, and then I know some people are like, "Oh, Blue Black beats it," um, and I don't know if you could still just play like Loris PO. Well, I know you can still just play Loris PO, uh, which is if I was playing Vintage at Eternal Weekend, it was tomorrow. That's just what I would do. Um, but I think I don't know. I've seen a lot of screenshots. I've seen a lot of people playing. And I think it's like open enough, where there's definitely a variety of things you can play between like dredge and shops and Tezzeret decks, Mono White. I think it seems pretty decent.
Yeah. So I think vintage has always really been a kind of rock paper scissors format between fair blue, combo blue, and then Mishra's Workshop with then dredge kind of sprinkled in there. I think that is largely still the case. Is you now have the workshop decks used to be like pretty bad. It was literally just paradoxical or Jewel. It was the main um bastion of the Mishra's Workshop decks. But the printing of Glaring Fleshraker and Tezzeret has really brought the Raker Shops deck, and overall, I think that deck is it's good. It's largely competitive, and it's also just very intricate, fun deck to play. And it especially skews to the combo side. It both has the shop straws where it just locks someone out under a Trinisphere or a Vexing Bauble or a Chalice of the Void, and also has a combo draws where it just assembles Fleshraker plus two tops. And the thing with four tops and four Tezzerets means it's fairly easy to assemble that combination. Overall, I think that there is not necessarily a strictly best deck in Vintage. Like probably the highest win percentage is Luris, but or Luris Control, but it's not overly dominant. And it's pretty easy to be attacked by a lot of the other combo decks, especially combo decks playing stock up, or the Raker deck also seems somewhat well positioned against Esper just because it's not as vulnerable to Null Rod as something like Jewel is, and can even play its own null rods in the sideboard if ever it plays against some of the combo oriented PO like the more combo oriented PO decks, and even some of the Jewel decks, which is a lot of fun. Like the thing of Vintage is I think Oath is almost dead at this point. It's coming to Eternal Weekend. Everyone will still play Oath because people enjoy doing it, but it's like probably the worst it's been in a long time.
Yeah, which is sad because I love playing Oath of Druids, and I probably registered it. I'm guilty of registering it maybe a little bit past its prime, like I do with some of my favorite decks. But yeah, I'm with you. It's tough to be Oath right now, because I mean you may be beat up on some of the control Luris decks, but now that there's a lot of like PO Luris and stuff like that out
Mhm.
there, it's just very difficult for Oath to do what it needs to do before it dies.
Yeah, I did register in 2023, and I
Okay.
played against Mono White Initiative 6 times. So that was actually a good tournament. I only lost when they drew the third Containment Priest, and in one match I lost because they drew the fourth Containment Priest. That
Yes.
was that was fun. That was a
A,
good
t-
time.
a tale as old as time. Yeah. So I actually top four a local vintage event over the weekend at On the Draw Games in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. They do a proxy friendly vintage monthly event. It's like $25 to enter. And we actually got 16, which is, I mean, for just a local weekly paper event, I mean, 16 is great. So we had 5 rounds of Swiss and cut to top four. So I actually played Dredge. I don't do it that often. I don't main Dredge as my primary vintage deck, but every now and then, like not a lot of people show up with Dredge to these weeklies. People want to cast their Ancestrals and Time Walks, and sometimes I like to show up and keep them honest with my Narcomoebas and Icarids, and it was a lot of fun, but I won't spoil the technology because the person that beat me in top four plays a lot of high level vintage events, and I think they were testing out some of their technology for some upcoming events in Italy and EW. But needless to say, I was incredibly helpless in my top four matchup, and sometimes that's what you sign up for when you bring a Bazaar of Baghdad deck, right? Between
Yeah.
things like Pithing Needle Cage, Tabernacle, etc. Like you cheese a lot of wins, but you are also prone to cheese yourself, and that's certainly what happened with me.
Yeah, no, I definitely have a similar strategy when I go to a local brewery vintage series, is that I just cut all of my dredge shade. I'm like, okay, this is a full proxy event. I don't think people are come out here to play dredge. And usually I'm right. So far, I have not lost to Bizarre at one of those. But
Yeah.
one of these days, someone will show up playing Dredge, and I will be absolutely smoked.
Yeah, the look on the face when you just, you say you keep 7 and then you say Bazaar Baghdad draw 2, and it sinks in
Yeah.
that they did not bring the sideboard for that. So quick question, what deck do you feel like is probably best positioned if you were going to play unpowered, because certainly at Eternal Weekend there is a prize for the top X number of unpowered finishes as well. So a lot of folks that maybe don't have access to power because Eternal Weekend is not proxy friendly, they still want to get in on the action, and you can still play things like Mana Crypt and Chrome Mox and stuff like that. So you're not completely without mana acceleration. If you were in maybe the unenviable position of wanting to play vintage EDW without power, I know I would probably look at Mono White Initiative as the deck I would want to play. Red Prison also is one that seems to put up results unpowered from time to time at these events. What would you bring, just curious, if you didn't have access to power and you wanted to play vintage?
Yeah. I think it has to either be a mono red or mono white initiative. Like mono white initiative has a little bit of a comeback. A powered version has a little bit of a comeback now because of the existence of Clarion Conqueror. Just playing Archon of Emeria and Clarion Conqueror is probably one of the more powerful things you can do in vintage. Even if you're not going to as likely to do it on turn one, you probably just have to play some number of spirit guides and just other worse mana acceleration just to make sure you have that 3 on turn one. But I've always been impressed by mono red, just how Blood Moon is positioned um, on the play. And it could just have a slightly better attack angle of attack versus Dredge when you can just Blood Moon them out, and you're still just playing 4 null rods and kill very quickly. But I definitely leap towards mono white just because of the power of Clarion Conqueror, especially against the Raker Shops deck.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a powerful card for sure.
yeah, so last year, the one kind of interesting unpowered deck I think is kind of neat is actually Vintage Goblins with Goblin Recruiter is surprisingly playable in Vintage because it does just have turn 2 kills and also gets to play a lot of the same cards as Moonstompy, but uh, wins a little fast. So I think looking at a Goblin Recruiter is actually kind of interesting as a outside unpowered deck.
Yeah, that wasn't even on my radar. And I mean, I love playing weird, funky cards. I mean, any old school format that'll let me cast a Scheherazade, for example, like I'm into. And vintage is of course the last bastion for Goblin Recruiter and 60 card Magic. What's the kill in that deck? Is it just one of the is it the guy that clones the top card of your deck that with that combo, or how do you actually kill?
So generally, what you do if you Goblin Recruiter, there's the easy way and like the harder way. So I think usually the easy way generally involves putting a Goblin Wizard on top, basically stacking it so you draw something that gives like a conspicuous steal with something that gives it haste. You use
Okay,
basically then give it Goblin Wizard's draw like a Muxus, give the Snoop Goblin Wizard's ability, tap it to put Muxus in, and then just and you can
got
do
it.
the same thing with a lackey if you have it, but it generally involves a snoop, something that gives it haste, usually a lord of some sort that you just draw, and then you can always just mix in something like a Skirk Prospect and make sure you have the mana. For the exact stack, but if you do resolve Goblin Recruiter and have one land to play, it's just always a kill.
Right. Yeah, I'd imagine that there's a way to do it from there. I'll tell you what, like there are very few things that would keep me from being angry if a round was like 10 or 15 minutes over time. But if I walk by a table and somebody was stacking a Goblin Recruiter pile, I'd be like, you know what? I'm good. Whenever the next round starts, we're good. Let this person have their fun. They
Yeah.
deserve it. So,
No.
yeah, power to anybody that chooses to bring that. That's funny.
Yeah, no. Well, last year I was playing like Tinker Breach. So my opponent resolved Goblin Recruiter, and I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. I'm gonna Merchant Scroll for Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze, you stack up the
Just
top,
clear the
and you.
top. Yes.
I was like, I was just like, no idea. So I guess I kept like a slower hand. I was like, oh, I assume I died to that.
That's amazing. The emergency, like, mill six, right?
Yeah, yeah, it works out. Like
That's
I had a pretty good matchup slate last year. I played against Goblin Recruiter, Doomsday, and like a bunch of Jewel Shops, and I was playing Brain Freeze, and that worked out pretty well.
Man, that's awesome. All right. So moving on, there's some new cards that are popping up, especially from Edge of Eternities. Edge of Eternities seems to have made quite a few ripples through the older formats here. Um, are there any cards from Edge of Eternities or any of the other newer sets, Final Fantasy, any of the other recent sets that you've been having an especially great amount of fun with?
So I have mainly been exploring Tez, both in vintage Raker Shops and PO and in Legacy Forge. It's an interesting, powerful card that kind of does a lot of niche things fairly well. And the other one I don't have less experience with, but I've noticed other people trying Quantum Riddler, either a combination of Felia Ephemerate or with Beanstalk.
Yeah, I actually just 5-0'd a league with a Yorion Beans warp style list that had 4 Quantum Riddlers, and the list that I trophied with had 4 Starfield Shepherds as well. Which, for the listeners that may not know, it's 3 white white for a 3/2. It does warp for 1 and a white, so it triggers Beanstalk because it's a 5 mana value, but it warps for 1 and a white. And when it enters, you can tutor up either a 1-drop creature to your hand or a basic plains. And so what I was doing primarily was getting Tamiyo with it, which seemed like a pretty powerful thing to do. 2 mana, draw Tamiyo, draw a card, and then tuck this thing aside to attack later when you need it. And by the way, trigger Beans a second time when it comes out of exile. It felt pretty good. The current lists that I'm tinkering around with are down to 2 of them. And I honestly don't even know if this deck is good because I 5-0'd with it, then I got a 4-1, and then the best result I've had since then is a 3-2, and I've had a couple 2-3s as well. So I don't know. I don't know if control is fixed by any of these warp cards getting paired with Beans. It still has some pretty big problems, but I'll tell you what, ephemerating Quantum Riddler or Starfield Shepherd and just refilling your hand, it feels like there's something there, but I mean, it's a tough format to play control in right now. So I think I did get a bit lucky in the trophy league that I played, but it feels like maybe we're like 1 card away from something here, 1 or 2 cards, or maybe another way to cheese in some 5 mana value stuff to trigger Beans. But Warp definitely, I think, did pick this deck up a little bit in power level if you are a control player and you want to dust your Beans off. Mapson, any of the new cards you've been having fun with?
I mean, I've talked at length about my love for Pinnacle Emissary,
Yep,
so
that's
I
true.
don't need to rehash that. I've also played some Quantum Riddler, Ephemerate Beanstalk. That was pretty fun. Oh, and of course, Red and Forge, and that's all I can think of, really.
Yeah, I've had some great, I'll tell you what, some great Riddler moments. Like, thank God Magic Online takes care of replacement effects and stuff for you automatically, because, like, I casted Days Undoing, for example, and it went to discard. And I was like, oh, I have 8 cards in my hand because I get to draw the extra one from Days Undoing. That's awesome.
No.
It's like, probably would have missed that one in paper. Or, what's another one? Oh, the first time I brainstormed and got to draw 4 and put 2 cards back, I was like, man, I feel like a god right now. So, yeah, thank goodness that I've been playing this card primarily on Magic Online, where the game handles these interactions for my small pea brain, because there are an awful lot of times that you draw cards in, 1 or fewer in hand, and Riddler makes it +1 pretty much always. So do not forget that when you're riddling in paper.
I think I told you, like, I didn't even realize that it counted just like your normal draw steps. So the first time I drew 2 for turn, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then also, if you have double Riddler, they both like replace it, so you get to draw 2 extra cards.
Yeah.
Which I know has also caught some people off guard.
I love it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the warp cards are sweet, especially in the control decks. I think the one weakness is they definitely accelerate you to the mid game faster, but it's kind of hard to play when the key turn in Legacy now is usually turn 2. So just like I said earlier about like Reanimate, if you get to turn 4, it's generally a good match no matter what you're playing. Same thing with the warp decks. You get to like your turn 3 or turn 4 super card advantage really fast, and then you just need to make sure you don't die on turns 1 and 2. So it's definitely an upgrade. It's just kind of hard to commit to that game plan in the current state of Legacy without having a lot of respect for making it to turn 3 in your sideboard.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed, at least with the way I was building the decks, was that like the supreme value of flickering a warp card was pulling me to play a lot of cards that are otherwise bad, and you just, I don't think, can afford to do that in Legacy. So like the deck I trophied with, you'll see I had 4 Felias, 4 Ephemerates. I think like 0 of both might be the right number. But for me, like that was a big kind of learning experience. Was like, yeah, when you get to like Ephemerate Solitude and kill 2 things out of your Eldrazi player's board, you feel unbeatable. But there's a lot of other times where you're just dying with Ephemerates in your hand, or something is getting dismembered in response to the ephemerate in U2 for one yourself, and you haven't necessarily set up your card advantage engine yet, and that's like basically a death sentence for Control trying to, like you said, survive into the mid game there. So yeah, bit tough, but I really do hope I'm going to keep kind of tinkering here because I'm having fun, and I hope other people do too, because there's a distinct lack of Control in Legacy right now, and I would like to see a way for it to squeak back in at least a little bit. Spider-Man. Any cards from Spider-Man maps? And I know you're a big Spider-Man connoisseur, but you've also been trying to not look at too many spoilers. But have either of you guys seen anything from the upcoming Spider-Man set that strikes you as potentially legacy or vintage playable, or is this basically a set that you think will maybe be relegated to standard?
I think there are cool cards. And like I don't remember exactly what it's called, but like Peter Parker's camera or whatever, I think you could play in Forge and other Urza Saga decks. I don't think it's right to do it. I think I personally would do it just because I want to. And I imagine other people will do it, even though I don't think that it is right. Outside of that, I haven't really seen too much. Because I don't know, I think a lot of it is just kind of low power, and I am avoiding it. The cop out answer is like the cards that use the actual like art from the comics, where it's like all the reprints or whatever. A bunch of those are actually just good cards. There's a Ponder reprint, there's a Path Exile reprint. So like those will see play, obviously.
Of course, that's the answer that you give me. Ponder will see play in Legacy and Vintage, but you're not wrong. I also agree. Any other cards, Kelvin, from your perspective that might be on the radar, even if they're just kind of on the fringe?
Yeah, so I think there are two cards that I think may see some level of Eternal play. The two being Spider Punk and the other one being Spider Sense. So Spider Punk, it's a 1 and a red, 2/1 with Riot. Other spiders you control have Riot, which is flavor text. But the more important part is it says spells and abilities can't be countered, and damage can't be prevented on a 2-drop. So this comes up to me as like largely a flex piece in mainly the Moonstompy decks to be One Ring protection and to be better against counter spells, especially with how the deck is kind of fairly weak to Forceful now the Vexing Bubble's gone. Is also pretty weak to Consign to Memory if like with a lot of reasonable triggers and like the One Ring as their main card advantage engine. The only downside is it does turn off your own Chalice of the Void and does turn off your own Pyroblast if you are trying to counter your opponent's spells. But overall, I think it's an interesting flex piece. I don't see a lot of the any combo decks that are really playing red and would splash it, but it could be a flex piece in Moonstompy. And the other one, Spider Sense, which is similar to Consigned Memory. It's a Stifle variant where if you return a tapped creature you control to the other hand, it's basically 1 mana negate. It's counter target instant sorcery or triggered ability. So largely kind of a flex card in the vein, in like a main deck flex card for something like Stifle Knot in the same vein as Consigned Memory that may have other applications main deck because it hits instants and sorceries, does protect your thing from plow and removal. And also if you are playing stuff like Tameo or Baleful Strix in your deck, assuming people actually still play Baleful Strix, then the web slinging may actually just be a upside. So I don't think that card's necessarily breaking legacy, but maybe it's an interesting flex piece people will consider in mainly Stifle Knot.
Yeah. I'd also be interested to see, I know we're not necessarily talking about Modern, but if this ever gets played in Modern, I know we've had kind of the 2-mana stifle with upside in Modern with things like Trick Bind and Tail's End previously, but we haven't really had like almost negate with stifle stapled on it. So this is a little bit different of a design than those other two. So it'll be interesting to see if the counter and instant or sorcery can carry this enough. I don't know how often the web slinging will come into play, unless, like you said, you're playing cantrips like Baleful Strix in Legacy. You could play the Icefang Coatl in Modern, for example, if that's something that you wanted to do, or there's certainly no shortage of ETB effects on creatures these days. So, perhaps there is, even something like Thunder Trap Trainer, for example, is a card that is already in this color that you would want to pick back up and play over again, especially in the mid to late game when you could potentially offspring it as well and get even deeper.
Yeah, so the one interesting thing about web slinging is it does specify tapped. So I'm thinking just like it's probably not the worst to like pick up a Tameo for the most
Yeah.
part, and also Tameo and stuff like that are cards that are going to just be turned sideways from it consistently. So I think the web slinging is a tap is pretty big drawback, and that you have to have a cheap creature that is either has tap ability or is going to be attacking, which is somewhat harder to.
Yeah. And I'm also just kind of thinking out loud here, but like there is this sort of interesting dynamic of like this is an instant, and so you can potentially pick up a blocked attacker. And so that could put your opponent in some interesting combat situations with Kaido in the deck as well with ninjutsu, when they've got to worry about like if they block, you can potentially pick it up and do something. Yeah, you need something on the stack, right? But there's other web slinging cards as well. So anyway, just kind of thinking out loud there. Could be interesting. But yeah, I think what's really going to determine if this thing sees play, especially in modern, where it's maybe more likely, is how good is that counter instant or sorcery? Because like we said, we've seen the 2-mana stifles and they haven't really stuck around, and so the value of the almost negate stapled on here will, I guess, determine how much it gets played.
Yeah, and whether that is better than just playing Work Consigned to Memory, which is
Yeah.
is probably going to be the kind of comparable card in a lot of those situations.
Well, you can't play 5 of them as much as sometimes I would like to. So maybe this becomes like copy number 5 for a deck that wants it.
There is actually one more card I saw that's like worth considering.
Yeah, what is it?
Electro Assaulting Battery. It's sort of like a Burgie. So it's like 1 red or a flying 2/3. It's a legendary creature, human villain. It has flying. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you add red. And then when Electro leaves the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, he deals X damage to target. So it's just kind of another, like I said, it's similar to Burgie in that like whenever you cast your spells, you're just kind of generating mana. And what's kind of nice about it is imagine a situation where you have like Galvanic Relay. Maybe you like cast a couple rituals in with Galvanic Relay, and usually it'd feel bad because like, oh, I spent the mana on these rituals. I don't have these cards in my hand anymore. But then if Electra sticks around to your next turn, you still have the mana you generated from him for the cards you get from the relay. And maybe that's like a pipe dream. I'm not sure. But it's at least interesting. And I feel like Ruby Storm is kind of a deck that at least I haven't seen in a while. So I don't know if something like this is enough to bring it back. Maybe it's just outclassed by their Storm variants, but it's at least interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I find interesting about this is if you play this as your mana engine, you really don't need to play a win condition, because if you just generate 20 mana, then legend rule it, then it's a win condition in itself. But then you need to making 20 mana Ruby Storm, that's like bonus round Seething Song, is not very hard, but just does means you don't actually have to play like a Grape Shot. You can just play more of these.
That's sick. I hadn't actually even considered just legend ruling it. I was like, how do you get it to leave? But like,
right,
it's built into the card.
Just play another one. Yeah, and I'll also point out, like, obviously, I'm sure you guys have picked up on this, but for listeners that may not be looking at the actual card text, the last ability does say when Electro leaves the battlefield. It's not a dies trigger, so exiling it with Swords or Solitude or whatever will still trigger it, or bouncing it with Brazen Borrower. So it doesn't suffer from the same problem that dies triggers have. Like this thing, any way that it's on the way out from the battlefield other than phasing, because it technically doesn't leave the battlefield when it phases, anything other than phasing, you get to pay X on this thing when it's no longer on your board. So yeah, that's actually really interesting there. Another card that you made me think of, Mapson, was Heroes Hangout. So while we're talking about cards that mono red decks might like, this might potentially be another one. So the first one is basically a bad sleight of hand, but in red. So this card has 2 modes. It's a 1 mana, 1 red sorcery. Choose one. Date Night is exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. So obviously worse than sleight of hand, but if you don't have access to blue, beggars can't be choosers. And then the other ability, probably a lot less relevant outside of draft formats, but Patrol Knight is 1 or 2 target creatures, each gain +1/+0 and gain first strike until the end of turn. So I guess if you ever need to attack for 3 with your Electro, this will get you over the line there. But I think the most likely ability to be played is the first one. Well, again, I don't know if this is good enough. I don't play, Ruby Storm or the bonus round deck. I don't know if this is an effect that they would want, but, 1 mana card selection in combo decks, you know, tends to get played, right? And so this is probably something at least worth considering if those types of decks are up your alley.
Can I voice my my complaint with this card?
With Heroes Hangout, yeah.
Yeah, this is like not really a Magic related thing. It's just as a Spider-Man fan, I hate that they made this big deal about we're basing this off the comics, not the movies, and then to show the two of them as like the date night couple when in the comics they're not together. Like they had minor romance, but like if you ask who his romantic partner is in the comics, I'm never saying Gwen. And he's got like 2 people he's actually like back and forth between. And to have it be Gwen instead of one of them is like crazy to me.
Whoever designed that card, stay away from Mapson, otherwise you're gonna get an earful.
I feel like it should be it should be Tiana or Kamala. That's all I'm saying. And they are wrong and they should feel bad.
I'm making fun of you now, but thank God we weren't recording when the Final Fantasy stuff was getting spoiled, because I was probably equally into my fandom, I guess I'll say. So I'll make fun of you now because it's convenient, because nobody got to witness the other side of this when it was Final Fantasy a few months ago for me.
I think it's proof that everyone at WotC simply watched Into the Spider-Verse and doesn't read the comics.
Oh man. All right, so entering the back half here, let's talk a little bit more specifically about preparation for this upcoming Eternal Weekend, and maybe a little bit about like a retrospective on your victory on the previous Eternal Weekend as well. So I guess first question, like, how are you just feeling in general, right? Like, obviously, not your first Eternal Weekend coming up here, but, does it feel any different, going back, knowing that you left with the trophy last time?
I mean, definitely a little bit, because usually I go to take a vacation, like I'm taking the week off, hanging out with my buddies and playing with old cardboard. So I do a little bit too much gathering on average and a little bit less focusing. Lots of wonderful bars and convenience stores with very cheap slushies in Pittsburgh is definitely detrimental to your Magic performance, but very fun in the moment. But now going back when my face is on their website is a little different, mainly because now if you show up, you scrub out, you do a little bit too much drinking or gathering or whatever before the event, like people will recognize you. People have recognized me at past events. That's definitely a new thing for me. And I don't really think that I'm going to change as much because I'm going to have fun more so than really try to say win. More so because like I don't have much ideas. I go to Magic events to have fun. I found that when I was actually grinding and like it was 18-20, that is just bad for my mental.
Yeah.
So because of that, I'm generally going to relax, have fun, see people I don't get to see very often, and very generally just bond and hang out with some fun Magic cards. And then maybe just meet, mainly just you recognize, they talk to people. Yeah, one event was really awkward earlier in the year where some guy came up to me and asked for an autograph on his Vexing Bauble. I was like, oh, that's I was like, oh, that's new. I've never had that before. I've never that's some kind of new attention.
Oh, that's funny. Well, listen, I wasn't going to bring this up because I don't want this to get contentious, but I do need to let you know I personally blame you for Vexing Bauble being banned. And
Fine,
so
I take credit for
it. No, I banned the cowards at WotC for not giving us the firepower back against blue players. That's what I really that's who I really blame. But joking aside, so at what point during the event last year did you kind of feel like, man, I could really like win this thing? Because it sounds like you're obviously there to compete and to win, but also to hang out with the homies and have a good time and enjoy yourself. And so at what point were you like, man, I gotta lock in because like I could actually win this?
Yeah. Well, so the Vintage on Friday. I did squeeze in a top 32 and got a tinker. And like the expectation going to the
Congrats.
event amongst all of our group was we're all going to like we had a pretty dedicated testing team with me and mainly the Seattle players plus a few stragglers that we invited in. And the goal was we're going to get probably one promo each was the expectation. While there's big events. So overall, our team of 11 or 10 or 11 got eight or nine promos. So it's generally a pretty good result. But so we went to Fogo and it had like multiple tequila shots and espresso martinis for dessert. So I also was like pretty wishy-washy on the Forge deck list because we had some half of the team playing Static Prison. I was more favored Beseiji. So I was in the lobby with Dominic Harvey till like 3:30 in the 4 in the morning, just drinking, hanging out, talking. And he was just like, couldn't figure out 60 cards in a Randmere. So he just made it a blue-black Randmere with Yorion, which is definitely a choice. And I almost slept through day one. Like the guy I was staying with woke me up at like 8:35. It's like, are you gonna come to day
My
two?
God, yeah.
I was like, oh no. So I rolled into the first round. I was a little bit out of it. And then near the middle of round one, like someone piped the audio to the wrong hall, and we had like a bunch of like dance
Yeah,
numbers.
there was a
And
dance
I was,
con Yeah, so
yeah,
we have to explain this for folks that maybe weren't there because it was wild. So it's a large convention hall, but the entire hall was not dedicated to Eternal Weekend. A big portion was, but we shared a side of the building with a dance competition, like a high school girls. So like there were lots and lots of them all over the
wasn't
place,
wasn't like
and
a cheerleading convention. I think
I
was
that's
it
think it was
cheerleading?
cheerleading.
Oh, was it
It's always
yeah.
cheerleading?
cheerleading.
Okay, so it
Magic is
was
always with cheerleaders for some reason.
so it was cheerleading, and their music for their routines, I guess like they had it set up so that it played on the entire side of the building instead of just in their section. And so they were essentially piping as like like dance cheerleading music at full volume in the middle of round one. And let me tell you, as I was in the middle of comboing against my Phyrexian Dreadnought player opponent, they were not very happy at the background music, but it did not cause me to make an error with my Paradox engine.
I was thrilled. I don't remember what they were playing, but they were playing like some pop music, and it's like this is what I listen to when I'm playing Moto. I was like, I actually feel like more in the zone with this right now.
So
My
actually,
opponent's like, you're not normal. Like,
so
yeah,
I
it's
was
fine.
actually getting down. One of the songs was prominently featured in the movie The Martian, which is one of my favorite movies. So I was actually vibing, just like walking up and down after my match was done, bobbing to the music. I was a little disappointed when it got shut off. But honestly, I mean, it was brutal for anybody trying to use more than two brain cells like me, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I generally listen to music that mainly features screaming.
Yeah.
So I was completely put off. So I was playing against like Black White D&T, generally a favored matchup for Forge. But the only action I drew was Karn, so I was figuring out how to make sure I leverage my Ancient Tomb and my Karn activations to not die. And then in the middle of it, there's just pop music. I was looking at the post like, "Oh, sorry, bro, I cannot continue with this." And my opponent was just like, we had like 25 minutes left of game three. He's just like thumbs up, put his headphones in, and I put my headphones in and just like put my head down until it finished. And luckily, we got an extension,
That's
but I think
good.
we were both just agreed to pause the match while it happened because neither of us could focus. So I ended up losing that game to a good matchup. Mainly, it was just like a little bit headache, a little bit out of it. So I started 0-1, and I was like, okay, now it's time to lock in. But some good matchups made it to 4-1. Then I played against Doomsday. I was like, okay, well, so my tournament's over because Doomsday is a horrendous matchup, especially when you sat down. Guy recognized my playmat as from a group of legacy players in Toronto, so he had like a good banter. He's a really nice guy. And then he just like won the die roll. Dark Ritual thoughts he's Doomsday on turn one, kill you on turn two. I was like, whoa, it's a really nice guy, but that was really
Yeah.
rude. Oh, and then game two on the play, I ended up mulliganing to three. My three cards was Urza Saga, Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal. And eventually that got there because he resolved it Doomsday on turn three, and then I looked through his deck, needled Edge of Autumn off the Saga activation, but the Doomsday taking half his life total, my constructs were lethal. I was able to sneak across the finish line there. And then I just kind of feasted the rest of the day on blue black, and for some reason I ran into an 8 cast player at 7-1 who didn't realize that a Vexing Bauble was a card and turned off his entire deck.
Yikes.
So my game, when he went turn one Chalice on one, I just went, cool. Turn one card, plus on your Chalice. And then game two, I just went bobble. It's like force it. Like great. Second bobble, and you just decks didn't do anything. So that was somewhat fortunate because like in the top tables and a tournament, there was a Rhinos player and there was an ATAS player, and I just really don't know how they survived when that many vexing bobbles and Reanimator was like the top
Yeah.
decks of the tournament.
I mean, especially Rhinos with all those baubles in that room. That's wild. Good
Yeah.
for that player. Absolute hero to make it that far.
Yeah. So I think when I finally realized like, okay, I can actually win this event was when I were going into round nine, played against a known player that I was like assumed was on blue black. Kept good hand against blue black, basically just like double bobble, turn three card or turn three ring. He died quite horribly, so I was able to go into day two at 8-1. At that point, like you're in striking distance. Just because I started 0-1, I was unlikely to be 9-1-1 draw in. So I was like, at that point, it's like, okay, 2-0, 2-0 is the top eight, and then once you're in top eight, anything can happen. So going back to the hotel at 8-1 is when it really sinks in that, yeah, you can actually win this event, that you are definitely in striking distance. Got slightly more sleep than the day before. Because at that point, I was like, from 8-1, I actually got stuff to play for now. I'm not just going to hang out in the lobby uh, taking advantage of the brewery's free drinks all night. So shout out to the brewery. They do have drink tickets and give out free drinks.
One of the great spots in the area for sure.
So then waking up, I reviewed all the coverage, so at least I knew who like the decks that a lot of the top players were on. Got sat down for round 10, and I was paired against a painter player, and I was like, oh, great. Painter is from a complex matchup. But it's very hard on the painter player, and it's very easy on the forge player if the forge player is practiced. After that point, I was like, okay, I'm largely favored. Very fast 2-0. Round 11, played against D&T, won the die roll. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in at that point. Especially because my opponent revealed a Yorion, and my hand was turn one, the main deck Needle, turn two, Karn. And I was like, yeah, okay, this game ends. And then at that point, 10-1, I was locked to be on the play. The worst part about the top eight is when I saw the final standings breakdown, it was the top three seeds were all Forge players.
Yeah.
So Forge on the play is very scary for any deck, and I was the lowest seeded Forge player. So at
Okay.
any point in the top eight, if the Forge players did not make a quarterfinal exit, I would be on the draw in the Forge Mirror, which is the worst matchup in the
Yeah.
entire history of Legacy.
Horrible. Horrible to be
Is
on the draw. Yeah.
yeah, for the worst matchup for Forge in like all of human history is the Forge Mirror on the draw. So,
Absolutely.
but luckily, both of them lost in the quarterfinals, so I was able to have to play the entire way through the top eight, which definitely made it a lot easier.
Well, I'll tell you what, we were in the car ride heading back. Mapson was driving. We had a full car headed back to the Philadelphia area when the finals were going on, and we were cheering and rooting for, or at least I was, for Forge. I know a lot of folks were, so I didn't know you at the time yet, but we were rooting for you in the car. There were a bunch of Forge gamers there that were excited to see you get out from that collector oof situation there in the finals.
This the seven collectors.
Yeah.
That finals, I think got a little bit. I was a little bit tired, hyper focused. Like, okay, that's a step on the throat when I dismembered the Noble Hierarch, which was definitely a bad move. Because at that point, I was just like very tired.
Yeah.
Definitely not the greatest play, but I locked it in and was able to ring chain and leverage my Flesh Raker to sneak across the finish line in the end, and then dodge the Atraxa trigger.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if you haven't seen that match, I would encourage, some listeners to go back and, watch the VOD there. It's, I think, a great example of, like you said, hey, maybe you make one play that you wish you could take back, but you don't let it, turn into a second play, into a third play like that. And, you were in an incredibly tough spot in that game. And honestly, like you could go back and look at the list I registered. I wasn't on Fleshraker. I was on a Paradox Engine build of Forge still at that point. And I didn't love Fleshraker out of the gate because I just didn't like the idea of turning on my opponent's creature-based removal. And yeah, I mean, that was obviously watching just how well Fleshraker performed in the top eight there. I was like, oh, I'm like obviously really wrong about this. Like I cashed, but I probably could have done a heck of a lot better if I was playing this busted ass card. So
Yeah, I think
yeah, it was really cool to see what that sort of opened up for the deck.
yeah, that's like the one thing I credit our testing process in is that we had kind of the same initial idea that like why are we playing this creature when it turns on all the removal, but then realized like Fleshraker was probably the card I bottomed the most off mulligans. So I generally only keep it in my opening hand if I was mulliganing, if I was playing against a null rod or a null rod-esque deck, so that I actually needed the colorless mana.
Right.
Because for the most part, you're not. It's not a core engine piece. It's simply a win condition that you find eventually and gets you out of a lot of tough spots, mainly just making blockers, being a way to generate mana outside of Collector Roof, and just being a pretty decent card overall that kills out of nowhere. So we just thought like we never want an opener. A hand is not made by a Fleshraker, but Fleshraker in conjunction with all of your other 4 drops that find Fleshraker is incredibly broken and just a really simple win condition and mana engine that really just snowballs a lot of kind of middling positions into victories.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish that I had played it then, but it was really awesome to see it put in work like that for sure. It definitely gives a completely different angle to the deck. Um, so with that being said, I mean, not necessarily asking you to reveal what you're planning on playing, but I know that Mystic Forge wasn't necessarily the type of deck that you were looking to play last year and it kind of pulled you towards it. Like, is there anywhere that you're leaning? Do you think you would play Forge again? Where are you at in your deck selection process right now for this year?
Yeah, so I'm still a little bit lost. The Forge selection last year was a purely mercenary selection in that we found the deck was broken, Vexing Bauble was broken, and it had like a lot of our sideboard plans and our matchup heuristics gave us a winning matchup against every deck in the format that wasn't Jeskai control. And we are totally fine punting the Jeskai control matchup or like punting the Test matchup. Test and Storm combo are really not great matchups. Vexing Bubble helped, but we were just at the point where it's like, screw it, cut the mind break traps and said, if we play against a one Test player, we will lose. And
Yeah,
um,
I feel like your best way to not run into Jeskai control is to start 2-0, right? So, I mean,
exactly. So it was definitely funny. Like in our assessment, our my testing partner John, who was the 1 seed going to top 8, his only loss was the test. Yeah,
really?
yeah,
It's funny how that
and
works
luckily,
out, right? You're like, well, I guess I'll just lose if I, and then like clockwork, you'll get paired into like the one person in the bracket,
yeah,
right? So there you go.
yeah, yeah, it was fine. Well, my one loss was to D&T of all things in round 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're still on the fence for this year though, you think?
Yeah, so I've got like I'll just say the 3 or 4 decks I'm considering. Like obviously, blue black is on my radar. I'm likely gonna play it, but only if we can figure out a winning sideboard, like a winning or novel sideboard plan for the mirrors, boost win percentage. Also I like playing Painter. Played Painter in 2023. I think it has against like experienced opponents who played a lot of the Painter mirror. You can have some bad matchups, but it's generally favored into blue black and has a lot of tricks that people don't see, and it's really easy to tailor the deck to target certain matchups. The only problem is you do lack agency on turns 1 and 2 against a lot of the faster combo decks, but you generally have a winning slate against any deck as long as you make it to turn 3. But make it to turn 3 is somewhat hard. Also, can always bring back Forge. I'm not necessarily a Forge player, but if the deck's well positioned, play it. Like the deck is powerful. It's like one of the top 2 or 3 combo decks currently being played. Obviously, way less broken. They were not locking it in with their without the inclusion of Vexing Bauble like we did last year. And also could play a naughty variant, mainly probably Breakfast would be my preferred one. I played a lot of Breakfast even before Thassa's Oracle was printed, so it's a little bit of a pet deck of mine, and Naughty gave that deck a large boost. So I'm probably going to play one of those 4 decks, and then just need to decide what matchups that I'm actually willing to punt. Um, how am I going to approach Blue Black Reanimator, especially that I'm going to play probably 3 or 4 times tournament. Luckily, last year I played Blue Black with Frog 5 times and just went 10-0 in games.
Wow.
Mainly because our sideboard plan of Pithing Needle, name Frog, side in all the Pithing Needles against a Reanimator, and have Silent Gravestone as a Graveyard Hate part of choice, mainly because it worked through Null Rod and was also just really good in the Painter matchup. So we definitely solved the blue black matchup last year. We have not done so this year, so it's going to be a little bit of variance in approaching that matchup, and we want to try to reduce that as much as possible, so we're not just getting, you don't want to just be at the whim of whether your opponent decides to jam or not.
Right.
And if your deck just loses to a opponent who's not really considering what they're doing and just jams, like you're likely going to see in rounds 1 through 4, if you lose to that consistently, then your deck is not necessarily viable. Um, I definitely found like you can't really bluff interaction, and the people are less tepid with going for Entomb Reanimate until later in the tournament. And if you lose to people just monkey jamming, then it's really not a good choice for a tournament weekend. Um,
Yeah.
Also made audible to something weird like lands. Don't think I'm really ever going to go back to Storm with how it's positioned now, even though I've played a lot of Storm in the past. And the rest of the form I find generally not my style or slightly unappealing.
Yeah, fair enough. Mapson, how about you? I know you've been having a lot of fun with Pinnacle Emissary. You have been known to put a Simic bird into play with a Nomad's Encore as well. You play Nadu. Um, you also have been, for some reason, talking about making merit lages in the group chat, despite my best efforts to get you not to. So I know you're kind of all over the place as well. I mean, how are you feeling about deck selection coming up? And have you narrowed it down, or are you still pretty wide open also?
I mean, I had it narrowed down to like 5 decks when we last talked about it. Um, I think most likely I'm playing Nadu, probably the mid-range build. I played Breakfast and it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't spark joy the same way. There's so many bad cards in your deck. Your mana is so much worse. I do think you get some upside of like, oh, you can just kill fast, like more consistently. So like I totally get it. But I don't think it's for me. And even when I was considering it, I know Larson said he actually thinks the Reanimator matchup is not good for breakfast. So I was like, yeah, that's enough for me to move on. So I really like that. That's probably my first choice. I've been playing around with it some, experimenting with Cameo in the deck, which sounds like obvious, but also nobody's really been playing it. I know Brady Monroe has been trying it lately. And so I was copying his lead. Four didn't feel right to me. I know he's cut back some, but you know, interested to see if that works out. But I'm probably just going to work on figuring out the best list for that. Newton just gave me his like updated Cradle guide, so I feel like every year I give Cradle a few weeks and then end up like on something else. But like I expect I'm going to play Nadu. I think I'm kind of off plans because it's a lot of fun, but I find the matches I lose very frustrating. I might put some more work into the 8 cash outs, but also getting meltdown sucks.
Yeah.
Like I kind of like that. Like it sounds so simplistic, but I like that Nadu just feels like it doesn't have anything where it just loses. And like the matchups tend to not feel that frustrating when things go wrong. You know, it's not like somebody can just slam down a null rod and I'm like, oh my God, I hate my life. Feels like you can kind of work through anything.
Yeah, and plus they have the cool future sight frame Nomads and Core now, so you can like, put 100 lands into play with style as well. You don't need the boring old frame either. I think a lot of listeners are probably in a similar situation to you guys right now where you've narrowed it down to a few decks. Um, you have the thing that, your heart probably wants you to play. You've got the other deck that your brain's probably telling you to play. Um, like how do you actually dial it in when it comes time to put 75 cards or God forbid 95 cards onto the deck registration sheet? Um, like how do you make that final decision?
For me, it's looking a lot. Um, First, kind of at the data, seeing what is doing well, just objectively, and paying attention to events and seeing what's doing well, right? So, like, Blue Black Reanimator is obviously doing well. Nadu is doing well. Lance is doing okay. But, like, looking at things like that, like what's doing well, then looking at what do I expect to be represented and what is good against the decks I expect to see the most of. So, like, I don't want to play something that's bad against Blue Black, even if, let's say, let's pick a random deck, but deck X has a 60% math or a 60% win rate in the format, but they're like 30% against blue black. Like I still wouldn't play that deck because I expect blue black to be so prevalent. And know that like in order to win the event, you're gonna have to be able to beat blue black in the later stages. So I'm looking for something that's got a good win rate against the field, good win rate against the top, like at least two of the top three decks. And then also something that kind of fits into my style and is something that I can play well. And then at that point, I'm looking to like to I like figure out my list. There's a great old article called the Elephant Sideboard Method. I do like to use that if I have enough time. I don't always have enough time, but I like to make like a good sideboard plan and then just kind of lock it in. What about you, Kelvin?
Yeah, so I generally treat these long tournaments as a tournament where I'm obviously not going to be at my highest level performance for the entire event. And I kind of need to take like you want to have shortcuts and heuristics that function from like rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, and then maybe the next day after a slight sleep. So I generally like to choose a deck that has agency in most matchups, and they were my heuristics and my understanding of those matchups are generally tuned and aligned. So I take less so of a kind of mercenary selection. I'm not usually a best deck mercenary. I generally take the decks that I have a either advantage in that I've played these matchups a lot, somewhat niche, and I enjoy playing. And that like my I have well developed heuristics that are generally functional at winning in the later stage of the event. So like in the last couple Eternal weekends I played, the only like best deck that I've actually played was Ren and Six Rug in 2019 with Stifles, Tarmogoyfs, and Shooting Mandrills. So like previous years I played anything from Test, I played Painter in 2023, Forge in 2024, played like random other control decks, but I never really play the best deck, even though like in most local events, even online, I play a lot of Delver. More so I always go for more niche combo-y kind of deck or a deck that I have a slightly off the wall that I have a unique perspective in that will make it so my opponent's heuristics don't apply in the later phase of tournament, but mine do. Because I definitely need to have some level of autopilot be functional if I'm trying to focus for um 11 to 13 rounds, especially if I'm gathering in my off time. So that is largely what I do. Like I'm never gonna play a deck similar to what Mapson said, whether it's like 60% overall but 30 against blue black, even if I have a new piece of tech or whatever. If it doesn't function, then it doesn't function. So I need to generally have a more kind of flat distribution of matchups that I have good matchups that I believe I can consistently win with good heuristics and a good sideboard plan.
Yeah,
And
good.
yeah, so I was saying usually I don't play decks that just outright lose to certain sideboard cards. Um, but like if we found that our Forge build was at least passable enough against Null Rod, and that it's fine. The only card that you could absolutely can't beat was Karn the Great Creator with how I had my sideboard set up. So because of that, like Forge kind of passed the vibe check, and it only really punted matchups that I was willing to punt and I was not expecting to see.
Yeah, perilous snare coming out just a little too late for the Karn mirror there, I guess. Um, yeah, so uh, I actually have a similar approach. Like I'm very vibes based on the deck that I choose because I know that I am simply not capable of putting in the work that I need to do to be proficient in the mirror for whatever the best deck is, unless that's the deck that I love. So, for example, like Mystic Forge, I played Forge forever. I love Forge. I do play a lot of other decks as well, but like I always go back to Forge. And so it wasn't considered like the de facto best deck going into last year. That was certainly, I think, Blue Black also. But nonetheless, it emerged as the best deck. And so, I was more than happy to play Mystic Forge through that period of popularity where there were quite a bit of mirrors after Eternal Weekend because I love it and I played a lot of it and I was comfortable with it and it didn't like suck a lot of energy out of my brain to play those mirrors. But if I were to sit down and learn Blue Black for Eternal Weekend, I would need to play like 100 mirrors before I probably felt comfortable. And that's just like not something I'm interested in doing or frankly have the time for. Like I have a job and a wife and a kid. And so, there are just like certain constraints on like my life outside of Magic where, like if I'm not going to pick that deck, then it becomes okay, like what can I have fun with and compete with? Like what has a good win rate against the best deck and what can I see myself playing 10, 12, 13 rounds of Magic with? And, certainly that rules out like Beanstalk decks and other decks that are probably going to go to time because I love to walk up and down and see how the other homies are doing and, check in on the standings. And I need my like decompression 5 minutes between rounds at least. And so like if I'm playing the deck that always goes to time, the brain is always functioning at 100. I mean, the wheels are certainly going to fall off by the end of day one for sure. So I completely relate.
Yeah. No, it's last time I played a deck that was I played a like Yorion Minsk and Boo deck right after Minsk and Boo was released and it was a bunch of suit mirrors. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna probably draw. So I put a Entreat the Angels on my deck as a safety valve in the draw mirror, or sorry, in the draw bracket. Started 3-0, drew round 4, and then just farmed the drop bracket when I was really far behind on board and just go entreat. So that's generally my out if I'm ever playing a deck, because I need to have something that just farms the draw bracket if I'm going to play a Beanstalk deck.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, and so last question here before we call it a show. What is one tip that each of you would give to somebody who is attending Eternal Weekend for their very first time? Maps, and we'll start with you. What tip would you give to somebody very first Eternal Weekend?
This is gonna sound dumb, but just enjoy yourself, right? Like it's a huge event. Your chances of winning are very bad. Like that's not me trying to be a jerk or
Well,
whatever.
especially because Kelvin's going to
Um,
be entering, so I mean, like, don't even bother.
No.
but like your chances are bad. The EV on this event is like pretty low. If you get one of the promos, like you're doing great. But it's like how many people do we typically have? It's like close to 1,000
It's like
players
1,000 for
usually.
Legacy, I think, and like
Last
600 for Vintage, right?
yeah, last year was 1,100 for Legacy and 415 for Vintage.
Right,
Okay,
and
yeah.
about 32 of those people get at like something that was worth their time. That's chances are terrible. So just, enjoy yourself, hang out with friends, get some good food. Yes, don't go crazy. Don't stay up till 6 a.m. because then you're going to be mad at yourself for not giving yourself a chance. Like, do just try to enjoy yourself in the community.
I guess, or if you do stay up till 6 a.m., make sure it's with Dom Harvey, I guess, like talking about Magic strategy is what I took away from Kelvin's commentary. But yeah, probably better if you just get some sleep. All right, Kelvin, what would you leave for a tip here?
So I say compared to every other Magic tournament, I have the opponents and the friends I meet at Tournament Weekend are the best vibes out of the entire Magic community. So because of that, I always go with positive attitudes. I've never had a salty opponent. I've never had a bad interaction while playing at an Eternal Weekend. Besides, at some point being like, oh, maybe it got a little bit salty because I drew bad or whatever. But keep that to myself and move on. Never really had a negative interaction with anyone at an event or an opponent. So because of that, I just take this opportunity to play the fun old cards while WotC still supports it. Generally, I also just agree with the maps and just like you just want to enjoy your time and treat Eternal Weekend for what it is. It's a fun gathering for fun cards. So far, I don't think WotC really wants to keep it around for very long. So I think our days are somewhat numbered. It's a little bit cynical. I say enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah. Well, I hope it doesn't go anywhere anytime soon because I agree with you guys. It's always the best vibes, always the best tournament of the year, for sure. My advice is along similar lines. Look, like people come to this thing because it's really high level Eternal play, and it's like the biggest tournament that you can do it in for most folks. And so, like there's something to be said for showing up and wanting to win for sure. I totally get it. But also, like, look at the rest of the schedule besides the main events. I'll give you an example. We got a buddy, Ian. He just got into Vintage last year. Last year was his first year playing the Vintage main event. And after Vintage, he was like, would I be crazy to drop from the Legacy main event tomorrow and just play the Vintage High Roller instead? I had so much fun today. Like, would it be crazy to do that? And I was like, absolutely not, brother. You're never going to hear me tell you to not play more Vintage. Like, if that's going to bring you joy, then hell yeah, tap those bazaars, dredge some Golgari thugs, man. Like, get in there. I'm not going to give you a hard time if you don't want to play Legacy. And so he ended up like dropping and getting a refund, opening up a slot for somebody else, and he played in the Vintage High Roller the next day instead. And I think he top 8'd that, although the power started getting handed out at top 4, so he was like really close. But regardless, I mean that's the kind of thing where like I haven't really looked too closely at the schedule yet, or I'm saying yet as if I will.
It's not out.
I'm not going this year. Oh, okay, I was gonna say like I'm not even going this year.
Releases as according in about 48 minutes.
Oh, there you go. So
that is just the badges go live.
Badges. Okay, so
that's just
The badges
okay.
go live, and so by the time people are listening, the badges will be out. You can register, but the event schedule they said will come hopefully within a few days.
Oh, there you go. So hopefully soon. Hopefully when you're listening to this podcast or shortly after, you'll be able to go find it. But my advice would be take a look at the side events as well. If you want to play the main events and that's your draw, fantastic. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being like, man, I never get to play pre-modern and it's my favorite format. And so I'd like to do 3 pre-modern side events instead of this main event. If that's going to make you happy, go ahead and play it because for a lot of people, it's the only chance you get. And so play the events that you want. Don't feel pressured to play the big ones. But if you are going to play the big ones, good luck to you because you're going to be going up against some killers like these guys right
Yeah.
here. Well, I'm in Las Vegas enjoying myself with my wife.
Yeah. Also, yes, and paintings are back this year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the big prize, not just the oversized
Yeah.
cards, but now the actual paintings are back. So a little bit
Yeah.
extra incentive to play those main events.
Yeah. Usually that's like the normal incentive except for last year.
Yeah.
Unlucky, really.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, man. Well, hey, you'll just have to win this one, right? And then you can be like, I was so fired up for not getting the painting. I had to destroy everybody a second time through.
Well, that's the plan. I'm owed. I'm owed a painting.
That's right. Well, I'm rooting for you. All right. So, Kelvin, if people want to find you, where can they find you? Or do you even want to be found on social media?
I am currently on X/Twitter at KJWallace18. I don't tweet that often, but if you want to DM me or whatever, I post sometimes randomly. Mainly the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Discord. I'm floating around a lot of various public servers, but don't check them too much. That's KellyD73, or just usually just have my name Kelvin as my username on most Discords. So you saw me kicking around there if you want to reach out.
Awesome.
And I'll post his socials in the show notes as well as mine and the podcast, of course.
Fantastic. And as always, everybody, if you enjoyed what you listened to, there's more to come. Actually, on our next episode in 2 weeks, we will have the other defending Eternal Weekend North America champion from the vintage event. Max Gilmore is actually going to join us as well. So if you liked what you heard here, we've got more. So don't miss it. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you like us. Make sure that you leave a comment. Tell us what you thought we did great. Tell us what you think we need to do better. We would love to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for the support. And Kelvin, thank you for joining us, man. This was fantastic. Appreciate you making some time to come on here. And I know there was a lot of great wisdom here that I'm sure folks will be working into their EW prep. And actually a lot of really good advice, even just for outside of for Legacy and Vintage as well, that you can apply to your general Magic tournament prep here. So really appreciate you coming on with us, and best of luck to you in Eternal Weekend and all of your other upcoming events. And with that, that's a wrap, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.